It is Saturday, April 19th, Bicycle Day, as some people call it. And I just learned from a podcast that I watched, that the Elevated News podcast with two dope dudes, I believe is the name of the podcast. If you're wanting to look into it, they're from Illinois. And I guess Bicycle Day started in Illinois, which is kind of cool. I didn't know that. We've got a really exciting show today. We're going to be talking about Texas cannabis policy. Before we do that, I just want to give a shout out to Cantrip. They make some delicious, federally legal cannabis products. I'm holding up one of my favorite ones right now. If you want to get some of your own, you can go to drinkcantrip.com/Cole Memo. You'll get a discount and I'll get a little bit of credit so that I can buy more of these delicious drinks. We are live, so if you have any questions along the way, feel free to ask questions. I will be right back after this word.
Here in the Midwest, growing amazing food isn't just a hobby, it's who we are. And that's why we created Envy Plant Foods. Whether you're working on a farm or starting a backyard garden, growing hot peppers for sandwiches, or cool lettuce for a chopped salad, Envy has the perfect plant food for you. Blended in Illinois since 1962. Support the Cole Memo and save. Get 10% off fertilizer for your wheat garden at envyplantfoods.com with code CHILL10. Plus, an additional 10% of your order will go to the Cole Memo to help fund the show. Again, that's envyplantfoods.com.
Thanks to the folks at Envy Plant Foods for supporting the show. And, well, let's just get into it for another episode of
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo is what allows this whole thing to go on.
I mean, you have to respect the memo.
Hey, this is Tommy Chong, and you're listening and watching The Cole Memo.
All right, let's do it. Austin, welcome back to the show. Thank you for sitting back down with me. How you doing today?
Doing great, Cole. It's always always awesome to be with you. It's one of my favorite podcasts. That opening is always so epic. Want to give a shout out also to Cantrip because we sell that in my store, and I had a root beer yesterday. And so one of the most, I believe, the most delicious beverages on the market. And hopefully we still get to sell it in Texas in the next 6 weeks.
Yeah. And the drinks are dangerous. And I don't mean it in the way that Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick says it. They're dangerous and they're so tasty. I just can't stop drinking them. So
the good ones, the really good ones are.
Yeah.
You know, I know both that, the beverage sector is very much like the flower sector. There's tons of booth out there. There's a lot of mids out there. And then, small percentages is high quality top shelf product. So,
yeah. And I think Cantrip is one of those the best out there. So not just saying it because we've got that that little URL you can go to. I'm serious. I've tried
I
a
will
lot of different drinks.
I will second that.
So, well, anyways, hey, quick back, please remind people who you are since you're back on the show in case they haven't seen you on here before.
Okay, so my name's Austin Zamhariri. I'm the executive director of the Texas Cannabis Collective. We're a 501c4 nonprofit here, really just a political action group that is dedicated to reforming cannabis laws, provide breaking and pertinent relevant news, and putting on big events that are focused on Texas cannabis policy, industry, and culture. And so, I've been doing activism work here in Texas for almost 10 years now. This is my 5th legislative session. Our legislative session here in Texas occurs every 2 years, every odd number year, for approximately 5 months, 140 days. So we have, not a lot of time to fix a lot of issues in the state of Texas. And lo and behold, this session is the session of darkness, is what I'm calling it, because the lieutenant governor has made it one of his top priorities to. A lot of people are out here talking about a hemp ban or hemp THC ban or a THC ban, whatever. This is a total ban on hemp, period. All hemp products, and these are federally compliant hemp products. Some that even contain non-detectable THC, right? So effectively zero THC products, if they contain any cannabinoid outside of CBD or CBG, then it's going to be an illegal product. So we're talking, non-psychoactive compounds like CBN or CBC or THCV. So like they're effectively banning all hemp, or that's the target goal, and by proxy, it is going to uh, pretty much destroy the farming market in Texas, because the overwhelming majority of biomass that's being sold in the state of Texas from hemp farmers is going to the consumable side. Very little of it is going to the manufacturing side for textile products. In the big decorticators and hemp manufacturers that exist in Texas, they're not exclusively buying from Texas farmers. Their contracts are from farmers from all across the country, some that have been established since the 2014 Farm Bill. So, if we are to kill the consumable side, well, then this will collapse effectively the hemp farming segment, even for non psychoactive compounds, like just for just biomass. And so, and I believe also the intent is, while they're going to try to kill the farming side and the hemp side, I don't feel confident that they're going to expand the compassionate use side. Compassionate use is our medical marijuana program in Texas, and it's the most restrictive program perhaps in the country. Kudos to anybody that can find one worse than Texas. uh, but if they don't expand the compassionate use program, which they didn't last session, and they've only minimally done so since 2015. And this year's proposed expansion is another minimal step. And if they don't expand it, it will crater what's left of that industry, because the two big players out of the three that exist, the two big players are just losing millions of dollars annually, and that model is unsustainable. And so, no hemp market, you crater and crash the medical marijuana market. You effectively you've gone back to no cannabis in the state of Texas, and that's kind of the trajectory that the state legislature is headed right now.
Yeah, and so to just back up briefly, like you said, you have the compassionate use program, what some call the TCUP program, the Texas Compassionate Use Program. That's your medical program, and then you've got this framework for federally legal hemp, where it seems like it's basically your adult use program in Texas. Like it gives everybody access to the cannabis plant, which I
Yeah,
always thought was a good thing from the perspective of like a cannabis advocate, like more access is better, right?
certainly, right. And I think for all of us, and what we've been pushing for a decade plus, is we want responsible use, right? We want common sense regulation, responsible use. Um, and so we've really seen a lot of that under the hemp market. It's just there are so many people who are taking advantage of the system and the low amount of regulation, that the state of Texas has been able to keep up with enforcement. There's a giant myth that there is no regulation in the state of Texas. There is, and it was crafted into the legislation that passed in 2019. So when these guys talk about, oh, it wasn't the intent for us to legalize, all of these THC isomers and products and effectively legalize recreational marijuana, that we just wanted to create a crop for farmers to grow. Well, that's not what the legislation said. It was clearly a carve out for consumable hemp. They also tried to foster in a smokable hemp ban that that was put into the language and immediately got litigated and worked its way all the way up to the Texas Supreme Court, to only come out the other side of it being no manufacturing in the state of Texas for smokable hemp products. You can have as many of them as you want. And again, this comes back to the language that was created. So they can't keep saying, "Oh, well, we didn't know, or we didn't have. This was not our intent behind the legislation." There was always a consumable side. Like we knew what CBD was back in 2018, right? So we knew cannabinoids. Um, I know the market for Delta 8 and some of these other, HHC and THCA and all of these other isomers that people weren't generally familiar with back in 2018 and 2019. Now they're very prevalent, right? And including, the most popular, which is Delta 9. So yeah, the compassionate use program it was always the medical route, but the state of Texas is so far behind even just our neighbors in New Mexico and Oklahoma. New Mexico is fully recreational, and by all estimates, 60 to 65% of the entire recreational marijuana market in New Mexico is coming from Texas. We share, I think, one of our longest borders is with New Mexico. And so, and I've heard people talk about, oh, well, it's just El Paso. That is wildly inaccurate and incorrect. El Paso might be a little bit of a progressive city that is fueling southern New Mexico, specifically Sunland Park, Las Cruces, Chaparral. But if you think it's just progressives that are fueling this market, you need to really take a look at the Panhandle in Lubbock and Amarillo and all of these other major cities that go up into the high plains and in the Panhandle, because they are wildly fueling New Mexico. And Oklahoma has what I would call the most progressive medical marijuana program in the country. Like you sneeze, they want to give you a medical marijuana card. And so they, and it's pretty easy now. It wasn't always as easy, but now it's pretty easy. I can get a temp card in California and get that reciprocity through Oklahoma. It's going to cost me like probably 100, $150 to go through that tedious process. But then I've got 7 dispensaries over the Red River, waiting for me if I choose to go into Oklahoma to go gambling, because we have the biggest casino in the country, just north of here in Dallas Fort Worth. So WinStar. So everybody's already going to WinStar and they're already getting their marijuana in Oklahoma. They're going to gambling and they're getting their marijuana in New Mexico. A wildly popular $8 billion, projected $8 billion hemp market that is flourishing. The state can't even keep up with it. And so, it's not about access anymore. Like Texans already are getting access. It's about how are we going to be smart about it? Are we gonna actually try to like rein in the bad actors and like regulate it the way it should be regulated, the way it's regulated in other places?
That's been the biggest mind melter for me. It's like it doesn't seem like anybody disagrees with sensible regulation, which I
No.
think includes age gating to make sure that adults only are getting cannabis, testing and mandating truth and labeling requirements, where it's like if this product, just like any other product, by the way, that we consume, if it doesn't have what it contains, what it purports to contain, then that's a problem, and people should be able to have recourse. And I've not heard anybody say no, we shouldn't have an age gate. No, we shouldn't have testing. Like everybody seems to agree on what's called the 3-pillar approach. And I don't understand why it seems like some want to just push it into the shadows, which you can't regulate things that are in the shadows, right? You can you can add sensible regulations and make for safe transactions. You can't regulate what's in the shadows. It's like it was supposed to have been the lesson we learned from prohibition with alcohol, and I don't know where we lost our way on that.
Well, I mean, we're literally 100 years from the 18th Amendment to the Constitution, right? Like, so we're living 100 years from that era, and one of the biggest lessons that we learned is that you make something like alcohol illegal, and it creates one of the biggest organized crime syndicates ever. And this is very similar to what we're experiencing here, because they talk about a marijuana black market, but you know what they're doing is much the same way. That's why you have these large Chinese nationalist grow ops that are happening in Oklahoma, and they're funneling a lot of that into Texas. Um, and it's not just happening in Oklahoma; it's happening in Nevada, New Mexico, a lot of different places,
Yeah.
California for sure. And so, all you're doing by creating this just gargantuan, what I would call the biggest black market in the country at this juncture in American history with cannabis, is you're fueling that black market. You're giving more opportunity for crime syndicates and nefarious characters who already don't care about the law. You're just giving them the opportunity to make all of the money, and to put the burden on taxpayers, because there's clearly demand here, right? It's make it legal, make it illegal. The demand is not going away.
Right.
The exposure has been, I think, more impactful than most Texas legislators want to admit. I will tell you, between the compassionate use program and the hemp program has done more to change Texas attitudes towards THC than the medical marijuana program did in 8, 9 years. Uh,
Right.
and
That's the
like,
weirdest thing about all this is, like, everybody seems to agree having the cannabis drinks, like, from our friends at Can Trip, at bars, like, it's doing so much to normalize cannabis, which again, I thought that was the goal of this movement,
yeah,
and
no,
to want to shove that into the shadows, it's like, what are you doing? It really feels like, especially the folks that are in cannabis, like, in the marijuana industry, like the ones that are saying there's too many shops, just go to the teacup program. Did you say there were 3 producers in the teacup program? How
there are
many dispensaries are there?
three. There are
3?
three license holding. It's a limited licensing structure, and it is probably the most costly medical marijuana program as a manufacturer goes, because your license is $500,000 every 2 years, between 3 and 5. I forget what the number is. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars, and just the regulations are so absurd. You can't store medicine off site. So, like, you think that you've got a patient that needs medicine 500 miles away. You know, you can't, you're gonna have a hard time getting that medicine out to them. And so the compassionate use program has failed by every metric and measure um, that exists. And it's because of the access. It's because of the just the unwillingness of the legislature to uh, continue to expand it to something similar. It's not like Texans haven't been to Vegas. It's not like they haven't been to Oklahoma or Chicago or any of these other places where marijuana is legal, and they've been able to get the access and see what it's kind of like, right? Like how easy it is. These streets of Durango, Colorado are not burning down. Montana seems to be doing just fine. Missouri right now, like, that place is killing it with
Yeah.
legal cannabis. So, like, we know that this isn't, and to be honest with you, hemp has been de facto recreational marijuana anyway. So, like, it has been very accepted here, and the streets aren't burning down. um it's really helped changed the attitudes for people, and a lot of people have gotten access that they otherwise wouldn't get. And you know, a lot of people who've grown up around the propaganda are realizing, really not as bad as I've always believed or I've been led to believe. It's getting high is not it's not the boogeyman that we've all been led to believe. It certainly doesn't want to make me go do crack or meth or anything like that. So
Yeah. Well, and besides prohibitionists, the only people that are really complaining in some of the more open licensing states like Oregon, Oklahoma, Michigan, are just businesses that are too weak to compete. The one group, and I'm kind of quoting an interview I saw from Vice with the former director of the OLCC, I believe, the Oregon Liquor Cannabis Commission or something like that. Um, they basically said the one group of people that aren't complaining in markets like that are consumers that have access to, a variety of products from a variety of producers at a fair price. You know,
yeah,
um,
he's right. So, and that's what's crazy is that like we're I think about a year ago, year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we were seeing strong resistance from MSOs and like people who were like very heavily financially established in recreational markets. Florida, medical marijuana markets, Florida's a big one. You're seeing some of these giant conglomerates seeing the traditional marijuana market kind of fall into being obsolete, just kind of cratering because of lack of federal regulation, if you will. And it does, and I'll be honest with you, I don't see a whole lot of federal regulation really materializing this year, even. So this current traditional marijuana infrastructure is starting to kind of like crumble under the burden of that lack of change. Whereas in this hemp market, there are none of these restrictions, and there's no 280E tax. There's interstate commerce. There's just the barriers to entry are so different, even though it's the same plant, whereas essentially it's the same exact plant. The only difference between hemp and marijuana is one arbitrary cap on one cannabinoid.
right.
That's it. That's it. Right. So it's the same plant. And so what you're starting to see is you're starting to see some of these people. If you can't beat them, you got to join them, right? And so,
Right. Yeah, you're seeing in like Florida, Curaleaf has opened up their
yeah,
hemp dispensary. Some Illinois local companies like GTI, they've really leaned into going D2C with hemp. They've even opened up um, what they're calling so they're like chain, not to give them free advertising, but their chain of dispensary is called Rise. And they recently opened up Rise at the Salt Shed, which is a concert venue in Illinois. Something you can't do because of the strict regulations with the marijuana program in Illinois, but because they're doing this under the guise of hemp, they're able to, kind of almost be like alcohol at these venues, which again, I thought was the whole point of this movement. I remember some of the old signs back in the day where it said regulate marijuana like alcohol, and it's like, yeah, let's do that. Why are we treating it like it's a dangerous substance? I know that technically speaking, right now, it is a Schedule 1 substance, but I think it's ridiculous that our programs are structured that way because they seem to be created under the idea that we shouldn't treat it like a Schedule 1 substance. Like, what other Schedule 1 substance are we selling over the counter? Cannabis is the only one that I can think of, right?
yeah.
And so I just wish these programs would lean into that a little bit more. And I think the closest thing we've seen so far to that is Minnesota, who codified the Farm Bill at a state level, and so they've got the drinks and You can get them at movie theaters,
Mhm.
bars, restaurants, your local liquor store. Like, again, I think these things are good things. And like you say, you're seeing more and more of these licensed marijuana operators transition over to hemp. They seem to be seeing the benefits of, they complain all the time about not being able to accept credit cards, not being able to ship to customers, not being able to deduct taxes because of 280E. And it's like, the answer is hemp. Because
Right.
and I'll pass it back over to you, but I think it's interesting to see, with this recent rescheduling process. I think it was something like 43,000 comments were submitted in support of descheduling cannabis instead of rescheduling cannabis. And I just wish, like, those 43,000 people and everybody else that supports descheduling cannabis would realize that hemp is descheduled cannabis. And all we need to do is just add sensible regulations, and boom, you have descheduled cannabis. And I think, just to take it a step further, it would also be nice, to your point, to expand that arbitrary threshold of Delta 9 THC, because the 0.3% is just silly. I mean, many people can obviously comply. You can make really great products like this and stay within that threshold, or, a lot of flour you can get to be under that 0.3%. But it's just like, I think it would help a lot of people if that threshold was expanded. So, and I just want to acknowledge some comments that came in really quick. Someone said, the problem isn't the 100 good operators, it's the thousands of bad ones. And I think that's, again, where we say, yeah, we're not denying
Yeah.
that. We're saying that we can weed out bad actors by adding sensible regulations.
We want you to weed out those bad actors. Like, it's funny because, like, all the people that showed up to testify for against the hemp ban here at the ledge, it was all like professional business owners, right? There wasn't one gas station guy there, like one of the CD shop owners. They weren't there to testify. And so what the general consensus was is that, yeah, we absolutely, please go get these guys that are pushing out non-compliant product to children, because they're doing it, and there's guaranteed most of them don't even have a hemp license, um, because, like, anybody, I mean, hemp license is only $100 anyway. So the fact that you wouldn't get a hemp license is kind of crazy. But, like, um, there's not a lot of people who are checking for that kind of compliance, especially manufacturers who are, like, you know distributing to some of these chains. And so uh
What I
I,
think is interesting is, like, in Oklahoma and Michigan, you don't see a hemp problem because, like you just said, what they've done with their marijuana programs, like you just said with hemp, you'd almost be silly to just not participate in the legal program. So, like, you don't see a huge problem with the black market, as some people call it, in Michigan. You don't see consumers choosing, for the most part, to shop outside of dispensaries. Like, on both the business and consumer side, you're almost silly not to participate in the legal program because they've made it so accessible, which,
Mhm.
again, cannot be said about the teacup program. I mean, honestly, it can't really even be said about my home state of Illinois. A lot of people will go to the dispensaries, but they're still not very accessible. There's no delivery options. The prices are so expensive. I know that you would take it in a heartbeat over what you have in Texas, maybe right now, because it is better, I would say, than at least your teacup program. I don't think it's better than what's going on with hemp. I mean, to
No.
hear that there's like 8,000 stores, like, it's like, damn, that's the way that it should be.
In there,
Um,
I mean, and I'll be honest with you, the biggest driver of all of this is flour. It's two-tiered. The biggest the the biggest, and this is what's funny, is that people who are from outside of the state who want to be very critical about hemp in Texas, and it's all of these, like, bad actors. The biggest um revenue generator for intoxicating hemp products, the biggest proliferator of them in the entire state, are the mass liquor stores. Like, those are the guys making hundreds of millions of dollars on, you know, 30, 40, 50 different varieties of THC beverages that are sold out all the time. So those are the guys that are actually moving more intoxicating hemp product than anybody. But the other big driver, especially for the hemp shops, is the flower. And it's hands down. There's no flower in the compassionate use program. It's only edibles and tinctures and topicals. Um, and so having access to that flower is, I'm talking millions of pounds are being moved through Texas as we speak.
Yeah.
So between that and the beverages, yeah, like the hemp market has like I said, it's done more for Texas jumping on than the medical could ever have done.
Yeah, and I want to get to a comment that came in from a friend, Jamie Campbell from Twitter. But before I do that, you talked about, and I'll try to throw. So for folks that are listening live, I won't have the links in the description just yet, but I'm going to try to throw in links to some of these hearings. If you're a nerd like me and you want to listen to not only Austin's testimony but everybody's testimony, I think there was like something like 12 hours of testimony in one hearing, which is crazy. Am I right in that? There was like
It depends on which one.
Right, there've been several, yeah.
Yeah, Senate Bill 3 and the Senate had 12 hours, but then when they did Senate Bill 3 and HB 28, which is technically the companion bill, it's actually not a companion bill, but they it was the House's version of SB 3, which had the drink carve out. Those combined testimonies went from 8 a.m. till approximately 2 a.m.
Wow.
So about 18 hours between the two.
And most people were speaking out against it. Am I correct?
Overwhelming. Like 500 people testified against it on
That's
both.
That's crazy to see. One of the things that I kept seeing, and again, we'll get to our comment that came in about revenue here in a moment. But one of the things I kept seeing during that debate um, was like, oh, you need access to cannabis. We'll just get into the teacup program. We're expanding the teacup program. Um, what is that expansion like? What does the proposal look like? Like, does it increase the number of stores? I believe I heard that it does increase like the available products so that maybe flour and vapes would be available. Am I correct in that?
So not flour, maybe vapes,
Okay.
or inhalers, something to that, some kind of carrier that is inhalation related.
Hmm.
Nebulizer, I don't know, breathing treatment,
Sure.
who knows? Like they'll get creative with it. But yes, it adds that. It switches it from 1% THC cap to milligram dosing, so pretty standard. This is something that's been done for a long time. And the committee substitute finally added chronic pain. So chronic pain, that is right now the biggest.
Somebody asked if Austin Z is your street name. No, that's your real name. Sorry.
Hyatt 9 News. Yeah, I know those guys. Those
Yeah.
are my friends. They know who I am. But it added chronic pain, and chronic pain has been kind of like the biggest, get all for patients. We've had autism, cancer, epilepsy, spasticity related issues, PTSD. So, those have been able to help grow the patient pool base, but chronic pain will be undeniably the one that will capture millions as opposed to 100,000.
Yeah.
That's kind of what's on the table right now.
And did you,
Whether
I don't think you answered, are they gonna add more stores or
So
more?
what they're doing is they're approving satellite locations, and they're mandating depends on which side of the bill, but they're mandating 11 different new licensees with targeted zones, right? So because Texas is so big,
Right.
it's hard if you're a manufacturer in East Texas to service, West Texas.
Right.
So yes, they are, but I'm afraid that some of this stuff will get stripped out once we get it to, if they are able to get it to conference. And the lieutenant governor has not been very acquiescent to working to expand the compassionate use program. So he's always pulled out chronic. They've always pulled out chronic pain. Like, we've had chronic pain in like every bill, and they always pull it. They always pull out smokable or flower or anything like that. I think that the goal is to kind of baby step it again. Maybe this time they'll add chronic pain. If they allow the satellite locations, that will really benefit one particular manufacturer, maybe another one. Really Good Blend and Texas Original are the only two that are doing any kind of business. So it will help them out. And whether DPS actually does expand the license, or they're mandated up to 2 years to give out licenses and have these licenses be ready for operation. So if we're looking at it already like a 2-year time frame for like legitimate expansion, you can already see how far behind the ball this bill really is. Like, we need Oklahoma. We need
Yeah.
Oklahoma like 5 years ago.
Right.
So it doesn't do nearly enough, and we'll see if it even passes. Like, I'm not even confident that right now the medical program, the expansion for medical program, is being used as a carrot to convince everybody to shut down the intoxicating hemp market. And so if they're successful with that, then there's a chance that they'll pass SB3 and not expand medical again. Nefarious strategy, in my opinion, by the lieutenant governor, just because they regret ever legalizing hemp, and they regret ever legalizing medical marijuana in Texas, and they are sick of it. They want it shut down, and they don't care how many patients, veterans, consumers, whoever they hurt along the way. It's of no consequence to them.
Yeah. Like I say, the most troubling thing I've seen is just people outside of Texas, possibly investors of the marijuana industry, applauding the collapse of what seems to be the most access Texans have ever gotten to the cannabis plant. And in fact, that's the reason I'm the
Legal access.
yes, legal access. Yeah, thank you. That's why I am such a big fan of what has happened with hemp. Like, I've been to several different states, and I always tell this story. Like, I remember going to Colorado and having a bunch of cash and being like, getting into the dispensary and being like a kid in the candy store. Maybe a bad analogy for this, but you get what I mean.
Sure.
You're looking at a wall of products, and I'm like, I want an ounce of that. I want some chocolate bars. I want some of those drinks. And they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You've already bought too much. You're over your limit. And I'm like, my limit? I bought like thousands of dollars in cash. I thought that was my limit. And they're like, no, you can only buy this much. And so with hemp, there are no purchase limits. There are no possession limits. I can buy it with my credit card. And that's why even living in a legal state, I love hemp, because it's given me more access to the cannabis plant than any state sponsored program that I've ever been in. So that's, and I think the same could be said in Texas now with your state sponsored program. Question we got from Jamie Campbell. They said 8 billion. I think you said this at the beginning of the show. 8 billion still being thrown around as the rev. I think it's like the number of how much the hemp market is worth. Is that?
Yeah, I lost you, Cole.
Oh, you lost me?
Let's see if I can come around.
Can't hear me? Well, this is interesting, folks. Comment below if you can hear me. I'm curious. Curious if it's just Austin here. If somebody can drop a comment and let me know. We are live, so.
Did I lose you?
I can hear you. You can't hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Weird. Must have just had a little joke here. Thank you
Look,
for the folks that are confirming they can hear us. Somebody asked if 8 billion is still being thrown around as like the worth of the Texas hemp market. Yeah, I think
yeah,
you said that at the beginning of the show, right?
yeah. So it's everything's coming from Whitney Economics, which is the group based out of Oregon, I believe.
Yeah, I actually
Uh,
met Bo in the past. I've got his card right here. So
yeah.
interesting. That's where that number comes from.
That is where an analysis from 2022 and then a redo here in 2025 provided analysis for that. In fact, I've seen number as high as 10 billion. I've seen I was on a panel on HB 28 with a doctor. I think he's in economics, Dr. Goldstein, and his was more like between 4.5 and 5 billion, somewhere in that area. So like everybody's numbers are skewed one way or another. It just depends on what data you're looking at. However, we know that it is a very large number. It is a bit, there are shops here that are doing, you know, $2 or $3 million annually. And there's just one shop here in the metro area among, I don't know, 500 others, right? So if you just extrapolate $2 million by like 8,000, that's like a pretty big number. And that's just retailers,
Right.
doesn't even really come into what's happening with the farmers, distribution, all of the ancillary business that is attached to it. I mean, these numbers can really bring in quite a bit.
And I know those numbers catch people's attention, but from a consumer standpoint, which is how I approach these issues, I hope I'm not losing you again. Can you still hear me?
No, I got you.
Um, I don't really care about how much money these people make. Like again, just from a consumer perspective, I care about access to the plant, which is what this has, gotten me. Sometimes people will bring up like, oh, it's worth this much or that much. And it's like, okay, how much access do people have to the plant? That's kind of just how I look at it. It's very simple to me.
See, and I'm kind of I'm agreeing with you in that I always approach it from a criminal justice standpoint, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
I spent 5 days in Tim Curry Correctional here in Fort Worth for less than a gram of what today would be considered CBD flower. Probably had lead, THC, some old, like, not even like, I didn't even get arrested for good weed, bro. Like I got arrested for some like swag, like super swag, bad weed. So, I went through the criminal justice system and learned really quickly, like, how bad this is in Texas and how Texas does. We're going to arrest more people than anywhere in the country. In that, when we legalized hemp, and I want to be clear about this, in 2019, we read the language of HB 1325. We were telling offices, hey, you guys are legalizing recreational cannabis and you don't even know it. And like, this is like when you're putting language that says every isomer, derivative, salt, you're literally everything about the plant you're legalizing, even THCA. Like, they didn't understand the concept really of decarboxylation. So like, we were trying to tell them, hey, you guys are legalizing recreational cannabis. And do you know what most of the responses were?
Hmm.
Most of the responses, not directly like this, but most of them were like, man, we know what we're doing. You guys don't know what you're talking about. Pretty much like, you dumb stoners. You guys just go back and smoke your marijuana and you guys don't know what you're talking about. And we told them, like, vehemently, the minute this goes into effect, it is going to impact how law enforcement is able to charge people and how district attorneys are able to prosecute these cases. Like, you guys don't know what you're doing. Sure enough, the bill passed, like, again, not with their intent, is what they keep saying.
Right.
But
Which is hilarious really quick because lawyers I've spoken to, intent in a law is irrelevant. The language of the law is what matters,
yes,
and the language is clear. And I mean, it's so clear. When you add isomers, I can't even salts, I can't even think of all the different things, but the point is you're adding consumable like measures to it. So when they turn around and say, "Well, we were just trying to legalize making pants with hemp," it's like, okay, but then why did you add a bunch of consumable cannabinoids to the list of allowable, uh,
yeah,
right to the definition? So it's just
yeah. Well, and when they legalized hemp, sure enough, DAs, especially in the big cities, started dropping cases because of like how we can't tell the difference between the two. And so we're just not going to prosecute these cases. We don't have the money to go to testing, because testing prior to hemp only required the presence of THC, right? That's all they had to test for. Does it have THC? Boom, you're going to jail.
mm,
Easy. Now they have to test what quantity, what kind of THC. Um, and so the testing has skyrocketed astronomically, and it's in competition with other things. Like, are we going to test? Well, I've got this, uh, you know, 3 grams of flour on this individual, and we have to send it to testing. Well, do I test this at the crime labs here under TPS? Do we prioritize this 3 grams of flour, or these rape kits, or this fentanyl, or this suspected meth? Um, I guess we're going to have to do the cannabis, right? So, these are valuable resources that, um, limited resources that if we go back to, right, they're not able to really test this cannabis, so it's not worth their time. But if we go back to merely testing for the presence of THC, it will make that testing regime much easier. Hence why you saw law enforcement show up, because they just want to be able to test for, if it's THC, boom, take them to jail. Which is why, again, adding this measure will only put more people in jail, and it will completely overburden our law enforcement, and taxpayers will bear the burden of all of this. We'll also see another, you know, climb in suicides and people getting addicted back again to opioids and SSRIs and benzodiazepines and back on alcohol and all of these things. So, you know, uh, Texas has a great opportunity to say, yeah, we probably didn't mean to intend to legalize recreational marijuana, but here we are. Let's figure out how we can utilize this emerging hemp market that is bringing in billions of dollars to the state, um, and how we can create this paradigm shift that will encapsulate all cannabis as opposed to segmenting hemp from marijuana, when we all know it's the same plant. So we want to call it hemp, we want to call it marijuana. I really don't care, as long as we stop arresting people and allow
right.
people quality access to safe products and to grow their own at home. Because remember, it is just a plant. Like, I can take the seed, I can put it in a pot, no pun intended, and water it and grow. Now, I'm not a master grower, right? But it really is that easy.
Mhm.
And so the fact that we're trying to move backwards away from all of that is going to be very damaging, um, mental, like, to the psyche, and to everybody in Texas, because people are like, man, why don't they just legalize it? Like, I don't get it. And it just comes down to money and power here. And so
Yeah.
we'll see what happens.
Well, we'll start to close here in a second. I just want to tell people they can find you at txcanico.com. I'm displaying it on my screen right now, and I'll pass it over to you for the final word here in a moment. But just wanted to share a thought that you brought up that I love. You said call it marijuana, call it hemp, whatever. The example I always use, if you went back to like the 80s and you're like you sit Cheech and Chong down and you're like, guys, listen, you can sell weed, but you gotta call it hemp. They would go, so you're telling me I can sell weed, I just have to call it hemp? Yeah. They'd be like, okay.
Yeah,
Like,
easy.
I just don't understand why people can't take the win for what it is. And if you have problems with it, like add structure, but don't take away access. Don't recriminalize something that, is federally legal. It just seems so simple to me, but that's we've kind of drilled that point. What does the future look like in Texas? Like, do you think this SB3? Just I want to end off with this note. Like, do you think this SB3 has a chance of passing? Do you think that it may die, or what do you see as the future in Texas with regard to all this?
Well, the future is we're going to legalize cannabis, whole plant cannabis in Texas. That might be somewhere in the distant future, but that's the reality. That's where eventually, before I die, where we're going to get. As far as the near future is concerned, yeah, SB3 has a very strong chance. The scenario that played out is we were really hoping that there were other pieces of legislation that were going to kind of clog down SB3 and kind of keep it from moving. However, SB2, which was the big school voucher bill that they had, the legislature has been fighting over for the last two sessions, it finally got passed. And so that was a big, big piece of legislation that was really like preventing anything else from really coming to the forefront for the House to deal with. But now that legislation is passed, well, what's right after SB2, SB3? So I have a feeling that they're going to be taking that up. My understanding is that the House wants to see some kind of regulation, which is why HB 28 is the vehicle that they would like to ride, and they would like to send that to the Senate. However, the lieutenant governor is non-negotiable on SB3 and has repeatedly stated that, like, he has even called out the beverages and has said, shut it all down. And he's even called out the big liquor store change, saying you better take it off the shelves because we're coming to regulate. And it's no joke. They've been hitting up shops left and right and throwing down fines on everybody. So like DSHS is really starting to come hot and heavy, which they need to. That's great. Just please, if they follow the regulations that are on the books, then that's already going to clean up a lot of the bad actors. That's the big problem with the hemp sector is the non-enforcement side. But we're hoping that the legislation stalls out, or that the lieutenant governor is really his own worst enemy. There's scenarios where the governor even vetoes the bill, like Ron DeSantis did in Florida. So, and then on top of that, there's still a lot of discussion that even if they pass SB3, the governor signs it, it goes into law. Like the minute it goes into law, in the absence of a new federal farm bill, it will violate federal law. And so then you start to see the litigation happen. Likely the bill will go under injunction. So not much is going to change. Lawyers are going to make all the money, and then it will work its way through the court system, which could take years. So, and who bears the burden of that? The taxpayer. So, I'm really hoping that this bill is not popular. Is not popular. It's not popular in the House. Wasn't really popular in the Senate. It's popular. It's not on the governor's priority list. It's not on the Democrats' priority list. It's not on the Texas GOP priority list. The only priority list is on the lieutenant governor. And so, we'll see what happens, but that we're watching this thing like a hawk. Right now it's sitting in House committee, and the only other step it has is pass this House committee and then go to the House floor. It sits in the calendars committee waiting for a House date, and once it gets onto the House floor, if they vote it out without really any amendments, it's going to go to the governor. So like they're not too far away, and they've got
Right.
6 weeks left. So there's a lot that can happen. We're hoping to muck it up and make it dirty, and hoping that the lieutenant governor is really his own nemesis here. So, which he said he's going to run again in 2026. So we could be dealing with this issue well into 2030. So
Well, keep fighting the good fight. Once again, if people want to kind of stay apprised of the details, I'd say the best place to go is txcanaco.com, displaying it on my screen right now. And, I really think that if you guys could just get some sensible regulations on this instead of a ban, it would really be a watershed moment for this entire industry. Like, it seems like all eyes are on Texas. So I'll go ahead and say the cliche saying at this point, don't mess with Texas. So, Austin, any parting words before we go?
No, man, Cole, I always just appreciate you. Always appreciate you mixing it up, even with opposition voices. I don't know, like, I see some of these people that you have on
One
the
of them,
podcast.
yeah, one of them testified against
One of
in
them for
Texas.
sure. Oh yeah, I stood next to her. So like,
Yeah.
and not just that, but she has been testifying against cannabis bills since at least 2021. And so now the shift has moved to hemp. So it doesn't matter if it's hemp, marijuana, these people are still gonna like testify against cannabis. So I just appreciate you and your candor, your desire for knowledge and understanding, and your pragmatic approach to resolving this, what I would call a cannabis crisis that we are in, especially here in Texas. But federally, it's still quite a mess.
Yeah.
So I always enjoy when you share commentary, when you post up, and just look forward to doing it again. Let's try to do it in the summer after the session.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
have way more answers.
Sweet. Yeah, we'll definitely connect again when Senate Bill 3 dies. I'm just,
Yes.
I'm willing what I want to happen. And if folks want to see that conversation that you just referred to, I actually just dropped it on Patreon. It's with Aubrey Adams. So check it out. It's colememo.com/Patreon. She definitely has a lot of things to say, and not much of which I agree with, but that's okay. Well, Austin, again, yes, it's been a pleasure. Let's do this again. And folks, I
Yep.
hope you found value in this conversation. We'll do it again. So take care, everybody. Have a happy Saturday and a happy 420.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what it's all
Weedster
about.
is what we're calling it.
Weedster. I love it. Yeah. Weedster. That's funny. All right. Well, folks, take care. Enjoy the rest of your bicycle day. We'll see you on the next one.